things where we already have data available for the most part, like bridge conditions, safety, pavement conditions. So I think those are the three main areas of focus. So instead of just distributing the funding, now we're going to ask the state DOTs to set up some goals, some targets for performance in these categories and start monitoring performance and providing that information to all the partners that are involved in the process. So that's one of the big features of the new legislation. I'll probably be talking more about that, and there may be planning performance measures too that we would like to see established statewide and metropolitan levels as well. One of the things that's important, I think, for everybody here is that there were a lot of discussions prior to the legislation about where to set the designation for metropolitan planning organizations related to the size of the urbanized areas, the population of the urbanized areas. And there were discussions about, some people had thoughts about raising that threshold to 200,000 for the urbanized area, or 100,000. There were a lot of different proposals out there. But this legislation didn't do anything with that. It basically maintained the 50,000 population for the urbanized area as the threshold for designating an MPO.
I was under the impression that new designations were maybe that 100,000 threshold, but if you were already a designated MPO over 50,000 but not yet at that next tier of population, that you were able to maintain your status as an MPO rather than, I guess, being booted out of the MPO club or moving.
Yeah, that may be, and I'll have to look into that. I just know that in New Hampshire it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter for us, which is great.
Because in New Hampshire we didn't have any new urbanized areas that crossed the 50,000 threshold. We had one of the urbanized areas in Nashua that crossed another threshold that's important, which is 200,000 population. And that sets up a different set of requirements and some different funding mechanisms. So we'll be dealing with that in Nashua, but that would not affect this MPO. Another kind of key overriding feature of the legislation is consolidation of federal aid programs. So that list of acronyms that you saw in the tip, it's going to shrink. There aren't going to be as many of them. There's going to be some consolidation of federal aid programs. Particularly, there's a new category of funding called transportation alternatives that consolidates some programs that you might be familiar with: transportation enhancements, scenic byways, safe routes to school. Instead of having separate programs under those categories with separate requirements, we're going to, the legislation consolidates all those categories of funding into one, and then allows some more discretion at the state level for levels of funding that one consolidated program as well. And I believe there's also some information in the new legislation that actually sets aside some funding for urbanized areas from that category as well. So the DOT here, in cooperation with the MPOs and RPCs, is going to have to look at how that's going to be implemented in New Hampshire. And that's going to be a big effort, I think, to figure that out, sort that all out. It will require a lot of cooperation and consultation with the MPOs and RPCs. But otherwise, in terms of planning requirements, the TIP, the long-range plan, the ITS architecture, and other elements that are required are pretty much the same under the new legislation. Not a lot of big changes. Really, I think that the key features of the legislation that will have an impact here will be this consolidation of programs, and will be this new emphasis on plant performance measures. And again, as I get more information from Washington that I can share with everybody, I will be happy to do that, to provide some presentations here to the TAC or to the policy committee, to get that information out and make sure everybody's aware of what new requirements there are. Yes?
Do you know anything about the status of the Land and Water Conservation Fund?
I do not know
I was
anything.
told that they totally cut out of transportation.
Yeah, I have not heard anything about that. I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I'm sure I'll be getting more information. And if you go to our website, if you wanted to distribute that to everybody, Mark, you can look at the actual legislation, which is a chore because it's 600 pages. But if there's something in there, that's where you'll find it. Yeah, I have not heard. There's another program, recreational trails program, that's part of this sort of consolidation effort that may not be around in the same shape and form that it is right now. But again, we'll have to see how that shakes out with the state DOT and what they want to do in terms of that consolidation and how that's going to work, how that's going to play out. I think the idea was Congress saw a lot of these programs and had questions about the value of them and wanted to allow some more discretion, particularly at the state level, to focus resources in other areas if that's what the states wanted to do with the funding, rather than taking a 10% share of STP funds and dedicating it to the Transportation Enhancements Program, for example. Now it's going to be more, there's going to be some more discretion involved and less set-aside of funding for those types of programs.
I think it was pretty consistent with the DOT policies that they had for the 10-year plan, or our state's policies for the 10-year plan, with a real focus on maintenance and preservation,
right,
and that flexibility to allow states to use more of the money for repairing bridges, paving roads, and those types of things, which is, you know, as stated by our New Hampshire DOT this past fall, was our priority. So, yeah. And you can find, this information. Again, if you go to the Federal Highways website, I was actually searching for, you can type in FHWA and summary of map 21, and there's any number of summaries. I know they have a page that you can kind of go through on the Federal Highways website. I can't seem to find it now. Yesterday it was all I could find. So
you can
we can forward along your email that you sent us to TAC and Policy, and also maybe part of our in the news or notices section of our website. We can put that right on our front page too. So
yeah, that'd be great.
Yep.
Get the word out there. And I see that you, Mark, you got a little information provided from FTA on the transit side of things. So I haven't looked at this yet, but it looks like FTA has been able to put out some information about map planning already. So that's good.
Yeah, it was sent out yesterday. So I guess 4 other project updates. Thank you, Lee. Just wanted to remind folks that we are doing traffic counts. We are doing local traffic counts requested by communities. The one thing about those traffic counts is we would like them in as soon as possible so that we can have our interns go out and do those, and Dan and I aren't doing them in November and when it's snowing out. So yeah, if you have any traffic requests or traffic count requests or speed count requests, please just send Dan or myself an email, and we will make sure that we get out or communicate with you, talk about when we can get out and do those, and we'll make sure those happen.
also turning movements too. If there's a particular intersection that you might want to address in some way or another, we can do an actual turning movement count. I know we've done a few in Somersworth, and hopefully they've been helpful.
I know. It's like another one for you.
I also want to just give an update on our access points layer that our employee Greg was working on. That's pretty much done right now. He's going out with our intern Katie Davis to do quality assurance and quality checks on those access points. on our major corridors and primarily the major access points. We're not too concerned about every single, residential driveway, but we're really interested in if there's any new driveways from new commercial developments or anything like that, we want to account for those. Along with that effort, we have Greg and Katie doing probe runs on our roads. I think those are going pretty well. They've been focusing on New Hampshire 125 and 108. Basically what they're doing is driving down the road with a GPS. They've been doing a lot of them during the middle of the day right now just to kind of get our average, flow and speeds that you'd get through or you'd get on the road. And they have just started doing our peak hour, primarily in the AM. So that commute hour when everybody's going to work, we're trying to determine how much, what the difference is between that average flow and your peak flow. Is it, how much is it slowing people down? How much is it delaying people? Where is it delaying people? So that we can, help identify those locations that maybe need some kind of transportation investment or some other type of perhaps regulatory changes to ensure that this delay is minimized and doesn't get too much worse in the future. So yeah, these runs have been going pretty well. They're out there pretty much every day, and we're really interested in seeing the results. We're just starting to get enough iterations of the runs in to draw some conclusions about where the congestion is, where we have serious delay issues, and it's going to be pretty interesting. So we'll be sharing that with you guys down the road.
I'd love to keep in touch with you guys about some of that data this year compared over the next 5, based on the expansion of the Route 2 service, to see how much of an impact that has down 108.
Yeah, I think that'll be really interesting. And yeah, we're hoping to use these two data sets in the access points and the probe runs to really understand, if you have these congestion issues in some areas, well, are there a ton of access points in that area? And maybe that's the reason. So we're just trying to we're building these baseline data data layers, and we're going to be building off of them every year, but really trying to just get that information together so that we can start making the best decisions with the funding that is available.
Yes.
Question, you just mentioned with the data that you collect that there may be regulatory changes that need to be impacted. What do you mean by that?
By that, it's just basically giving information to communities and letting, we are providing information so that a community can see, oh, we've had, a crash every single week at this intersection, and, it costs the community a lot of money. Well, by regulation, I mean that the town has the ability to understand what is contributing to issues, and if they need to make any changes, like, in the future, they wouldn't change anybody's driveway at that time, but, for new developments perhaps, they would say, we just don't want those driveways directly on the intersection. Maybe we'll have to move them, over to the side away from the intersection a little bit, But it's really up to communities. It's just to provide communities with enough information so that the community, with their public, can make the right decision for the community so that they're addressing whatever safety issues. We are not going to suggest any regulation to anybody. We are not going to impose any regulations on anybody. This is data so that communities themselves can make the best decisions for their own community.
So it's not in your purview to recommend or suggest, basically, you just give them the data so you can figure it out?
Yeah, we can provide options. If a community asks us, what are some examples of what other communities have done? We'll give them some examples of what other communities have done, but we're not going to impose any kind of regulation on. We have no power to impose any kind of regulation on any community, and that's not something we're interested in getting involved in or doing. Just to be clear.
Yes.
Let's say if Brookfield wanted to do a project, but they needed help, they needed funding, and you would help get that funding, correct?
We would assist in any way we could. If it was on, a state or federal road, 109, for instance, where the Lyford Road comes off, we know that we've talked with you and identified that as, somewhat of a dangerous intersection. We could definitely, work with the community to identify possible funding sources. We could work with the districts, state DOT. If there was a need for a TIF district or something in the community, we could help make some recommendations. Here's what some other communities have done. Yeah, we would help find that money in any way we could if it was available.
Yes.
Would Brookfield need to accept the regulatory advice in order to get the funding to do the project if we needed the money from the grant source?
You would only need to go by whatever rules are in the grant itself, that we don't create those rules. Whatever is in that funding source and the requirements that are in that funding source are the only things you would be held to, as far as I understand.
So it's the funding source that would have to be adhered to get the funding, and so you have nothing to do with the funding source's requirements. You just assist us in getting the funding.
We identify the funding sources, what they are, and what the requirements the funding source is requiring itself. We can help. If there's some confusion about what the rules are regarding the funding. Like a lot of funding sources, you need to, for congestion mitigation and air quality, this project needs to benefit air quality in some way. That's one of the requirements or strings with that funding source. So we can help you prove that this project, yes, is improving air quality in some way or not negatively impacting it, but we don't create our own strings. We try to help navigate the process primarily.
Or if you needed some kind of data, like a traffic count or a turning movement count, something like that, we would certainly help you do that. If that was a requirement part of the grant. We could certainly help you get that data to make your case for that, to get that grant money.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other information on project updates?
Oh, sorry. Just one more quick thing. We're working with Coast and Rockingham Planning Commission to locate bike parking racks at or near transit stops along the coast bus lines. So if there are any communities that have a coast bus line that have a transit stop that they have identified as a good place for a bike rack, please get in contact with Jeremy, myself, or I guess Rad would also be another good contact point in our region, and we can help start getting that process moving forward. It's one of our goals. We've reached out to a number of communities that have fixed routes right now, transit routes, and we're just trying to identify a number of locations. And basically the deal is I think Coast would be putting up the dollars for the bike racks through a grant, using a grant, and communities could match the grant, which is required, by installing the bike rack in their community, in the location. So the communities, all they really need to do is you get the bike rack, you just have to put it in the ground. And so, interesting program, should be good, and if anybody wants to be part of it, please let us know. Yep. And I'm done now.
Anyone else? Yes.
Just briefly, a couple things for Coast. I'm filling in for Rad while he's out on leave for a month, so I'll be available after the meeting if you have any questions about the bike rack program or anything else. We were able to launch the expanded Route 2 and trolley bus service at the very end of June, which was a requirement of the reconstruction of the Little Bay bridges between Newington and Dover. I'm sure Red's talked about that before. So we've been running it for 3 weeks now. Our ridership counts on Route 2 and trolley are steadily climbing, which is great. People understand that there's new options out there. It was a huge improvement for commuters and just travel throughout the day, especially because it really made the Route 2 schedule something that's regular and predictable throughout the day, as opposed to the way it was before. It was a little sporadic. So really excited to have that project going. If you haven't checked it out, please check out our webpage. We were also able to extend service into East Rochester, which is a portion of Rochester that's long been calling my office and asking why can't we get bus service here. Certainly East Rochester and Gonick would both like to see regular bus service throughout the day. At the moment we're only operating kind of commuter period service through East Rochester, but it's coming along. We've had a few riders up there, which is very good. I went and spoke at a WARC meeting the other night in East Rochester and fielded some great questions and I think people, now that they understand, you know, what the bus is for and that it's there, and you can get to jobs in Portsmouth, or I mean, you can get to jobs in Rochester, Dover, Somersworth, the whole community. Really opened up a world of opportunities. So very excited about that. And unfortunately this morning, neither Dirk nor Bev from Wildcat Transit were able to be here, but I am pleased to say on both our behalf and theirs that we received notice late on Tuesday from the city of Dover that they were going to be closing the Whittier Street Bridge next Wednesday for approximately 2.5 weeks for deck inspection and repairs. And that affects, it's not a regional road, but it significantly impacts one of our bus routes, and would have caused a major disruption of service to the Dover Housing Authority, you know, affordable housing. And so Coast unfortunately was caught a little off guard. We weren't prepared to accommodate for this detour. I called our friends at Wildcat, and they are going to be helping us out. I just got confirmation this morning from the director, and they're going to be providing a detour shuttle service for us to maintain those important bus connections. So again, not regionally significant, but I bring it up because it's good news for the region, because we're at the point now where our bus service is depended on by a lot of people, and we were able to find a way to really partner with one of our other large agencies in the area. So some good news, and thanks for listening.
Thank you. Yes.
We had a public meeting in Lee for the Lee Town Center last night, and there was a question of what the prospects are for Coast service for the center of Lee.
Okay, I'd be glad to follow up with you after the meeting. Sure.
Where was it going to be? In your common area?
I had one.
Yes.
The Newmarket had a kickoff meeting this week with our consultant for the downtown pedestrian bridge project. We're moving ahead full steam. They've already started some survey work. They were out there yesterday, and they're going forward with the geotechnical work. We are going to have a stakeholder meeting in September to try to bring the community together to agree on a design concept. And we're hoping to have our feasibility report done by the end of this year. And we're really anxious to get going with construction, because Eric Chimberg is going to be opening up the second mill building closest to the river August 1st. And he's almost at 100% tenancy at this point, occupancy for the new units, and the commercial piece is just taken off as well. So we're anxious to move it ahead as quickly as possible, and hopefully maybe we can do it by June of next year. That's my goal.
Yeah, there's a lot of pedestrians crossing 108 right now.
And there is a lot of pedestrian crossings, and there's a lot of activity, and you know, we're concerned about that, obviously. Yeah. So we want to get the project started. And thank you, Mark, for your help with that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yes.
Yeah, just update the city's Somersworth T project. We just we interviewed 5 firms, went through the qualification-based selection process of the QBS. We interviewed 5 firms last month. We selected VHB. We sent in, well, when I sent in my June monthly report to DOT, I asked them to certify the qualification-based selection process. And now we're just waiting to receive that certification. Once they certify our process, we can move ahead and start negotiating with them and fill out the intergovernmental estimate. Yep. So that's where we're in a waiting period, but we're moving along on schedule.
Very nice. Thank you. Yes.
What's VHB? And the first
Vanessa
acronym?
Hengen Bruslin Inc. It's an engineering firm.
And what was the first thing? The first one you said?
Qualification-based selection process, QBS. It's a requirement of, it's one of those requirements of receiving transportation enhancement funds.
Yeah, they have the, this New Hampshire DOT just released their local project administration guide, and they're doing trainings, which is a 2-day training. If you want to locally administer a project using federal dollars, you need to be certified on the training. Your consultant or construction engineers need to be certified for this process, and it's pretty involved, but sounds like everybody's negotiating it pretty well right now, which is great.
All right, moving along, doing fine. Item 6, other business. I believe first is Michelle, and then anyone else that has other business.
Yeah, I'll go and grab Michelle real quick. I know she's working on our sets update.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I just make a quick announcement now
Sure.
we have some time? Yeah, this meeting can be viewed at my website. You can write this down. It's GovernmentOversite, OVERSITE.com.
All right.
And I can send you alert in an email. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Michelle's on her way. You're on.
You are. So, July 26th, we have a SEDS meeting at 8 a.m.
So would you just introduce yourself and tell us your
Michelle
title?
Mears. I work on the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. And July 26th at 8 a.m. is our next SEDS meeting. And we're going to be working on the annual update. And we're going to have the draft plan ready for the strategy committee. We've had 3 projects submitted. And it's going to be going to public review in the next meeting. So that's the update on the sites. If anybody has any questions, email me, mallen@strafford.com.
Michelle, is anybody allowed to attend that meeting? Or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And it's posted on the website.
Questions of Michelle?
Sending out an email?
Yep, I'm on vacation next week, so I just sent me on an email asking if she could send it out. So,
Thanks.
all right.
All right.
Thank you. Other business to come before the committee? Seeing none, I will, thank you. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Very well.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank
Oh, one last thing. You can't leave. We have some of the food over there. Marilyn does not want to take it all back to her office.
Thank you.